Welcome to the show. You are one-on-one with Wes the Sports Guy here on YouTube.com and online all the time at westhesportsguy.com as well. I got a full slate to get to this week. Let's head into the top story where it has become official. Quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jameis Winston, has been officially suspended for the first 3 games of the upcoming 2018 season for not an alleged anymore, a sexual assault of a Uber driver back in 2016. Now, in Jameis Winston's statement, he essentially admitted to the sexual assault and really didn't admit to lying about it as well, but clearly he did with his official statements when it was being investigated in 2017 by the NFL and its investigative team. Winston's statement was the usual apology to his family, his friends, his teammates, the organization, the fans, the National Football League as well, and to the Uber driver as well, to his credit. So he did personally apologize to that driver as well. And with the climate of zero tolerance when it comes to sexual assault, the question begs to be asked now about Jameis Winston. Is his time done with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the very near future? Because he's going to have a 5th-year option coming up after this season, and whether or not Tampa Bay does pick it up is clearly up to them, and it always has been, even before this became official. But now the question begs to be asked, is he the quarterback of the future for this team still? And with the record that indicates with him at the helm of quarterback for the team, they have been 500 at best. They have not been a great team by any means and any stretch of the imagination. So going forward, Tampa Bay might be thinking about the very near future without Winston as the quarterback. But that remains to be seen with this upcoming season, but now would they start the first 3 games of the season, which is arguably, you could say, the toughest first 3 games of any team in the NFL coming up. They got to play the Eagles, the Steelers, and the Saints to start the first 3 games of the season, not in that particular order, but those are their 3 opponents, and you could be hard-pressed to say they're not going to start out 3-0. They're most likely going to be 0-3, and good luck making the playoffs when you start out the season 0-3, especially when you don't have your best player, arguably, in Jameis Winston, who is at the quarterback position, although I would make the case he's not the best player in the team, but regardless, the Buccaneers are not going to have him for the first 3 games, and it's clearly his fault and his doing, and he needs to make amends for it, and it seems like he is starting down that path, but time will tell. So it's kind of up in the air right now, but Tampa Bay, good luck. It's going to be a hard season again for you, and the pressure's on. You have to win at least one of those games, and flip a coin. I don't know which one is the easier matchup for you. It's hard to tell right now. Heading into the rapid fire segment that has a different ring to it. In the Ring of Fire segment, it's going to be a heavily dominated NBA rapid fire with topics that range from the naming of the NBA MVP, free agencies coming up, and also a high executive for a well-known franchise is saying that he'll probably resign after 2 years. But first up, it's Kyrie Irving saying that James Harden is, quote, the people's MVP, whereas his former teammate for the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron James, was the actual NBA MVP. Now, I take those comments with a grain of salt because you could say Kyrie and LeBron haven't had the greatest relationship in the last year and a half, 2 years, you could say, but it's kind of interesting, the argument that he makes where LeBron James you could say he has arguably had the best statistic season of his entire career, and yet he finished second to James Harden, but James Harden had a amazing season as well. If you lead your not just team, but the entire league in scoring, that's going to get you some votes. And also James Harden led the Houston Rockets to the best record in the league, and they were 1 win away from getting to the NBA Finals, if that counts for anything. But James Harden clearly was the NBA MVP all year long. He got the award, well-deserved. LeBron has many trophies to his mantle with NBA MVP and Finals MVP and championships and all that good stuff. So it was kind of interesting to hear Kyrie say that, but again, it was no slight against James Harden. He just feels in his heart LeBron was the better player this past season, and you can't argue with that. It was a coin flip, you could say. And it's also interesting to note that Russell Westbrook, who was the defending NBA MVP in 2017, averaging a triple-double, he averaged a triple-double again this past year and didn't even finish second in the MVP voting, so that kind of tells you about how that whole thing structures out with the MVP award. Whereas if it happened in baseball, i.e. Miguel Cabrera getting the Triple Crown a few years back in the American League, beating out the rookie sensation at the time, Mike Trout, who I could still make the case was the MVP that year. But again, I'm being biased because I am an Angel fan. But when you look at that sport and how it measures its statistics, you got to give it to that person who wins the Triple Crown no matter what. And then in the NBA, you don't really give it to anybody when they average a triple-double. So big difference there. Magic Johnson is saying this past week that he will leave the Los Angeles Lakers as a resignation in 2 years if they strike out on free agency in the next two off seasons, meaning they don't get a big name free agent or two in the next two off seasons. But this isn't a shocker because Magic kind of said this when he took the job in the first place, that if the Lakers don't improve rapidly, I'm not quoting him obviously, but if they don't improve by getting marquee players going down the road, which I would kind of make the argument they kind of have a few marquee players in town right now with Julius Randle and Brandon Ingram, just to name two. I'm not going to count Lonzo Ball yet because it was kind of a small sample size for him his rookie year, but he needs to show a lot more improvement going down the road. But if the Lakers do not even get a Paul George type player this offseason or next season, sure, Magic's going to live up to his word and he's going to say, see ya, I tried, I did my best. But it's no shock here. He's already said this when he took the job in the first place, so we'll see how it plays out. Segueing into the opting out of contracts for the NBA offseason coming up, LeBron James and Paul George, they've made it official. They're opting out of their contracts. Big shock there. Time is going to tell here in the next weekend coming up into 4th of July whether or not they're going to team up for a team to be determined or if they stand pat and stay where they are and get more money, which is always interesting to see how players measure out their value. Do they want to stay for extra money or do they want to test it and see if they can make it work somewhere else, or do they want to play it out and wait another year next offseason and maybe see what happens down that road? But it will be interesting and nonstop, I bet you, because it's already becoming nonstop. The ESPN cohorts, you can call them, and NBA.com as well, they're all over the place speculating about what's going to happen, what teams can do. It's just endless. It's nonstop. It won't stop for quite a while. Time for the segment that gives you free will to decide how to live your life accordingly. Do you remember?
You remember?
Do you remember the 1998 home run duel or battle, whatever you want to call it, between Mark McGwire of the St. Louis Cardinals and Sammy Sosa of the Chicago Cubs? I do. It was also a grandiose time in Major League Baseball where the home run was a sexy thing and everybody just loved to see those two duke it out between each other. I mean, they were division rivals. Mark McGwire was going for Roger Maris's record of 61 at the time. So was Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa was kind of trailing towards the dog days of summer, and finally Mark McGwire passed Roger Maris to an ending season total of 70 home runs, unheard of at the time, and Sammy Sosa finished with 66. Now, Sammy Sosa would go on to have another 2 seasons of hitting 60-plus home runs in his career, and ever since then, it's been in doubt as to the, you could say, legality and validity of those two and their home run battle in 1988, and really their careers. Mark McGwire has already admitted to using PEDs and HGH, which is human growth hormone, to basically, as he put it, to help himself medically get back on the field and stay healthy to hit those long home runs that everybody so cherished. Well, I call bull on that because when you hit those long home runs, you also make a lot of money. So when it comes to fortune and fame, that's why you did it, and that's why all these guys do it. Whether or not they've been caught or not, they do it for fame and fortune, and it's an infection that gets into your brain a lot of times that makes you think, as long as I make money, everything will be okay, and if I make people happy, everything will be forgiven. Well, not by this person. I do not forgive anybody that cheats, whether it be they admit to it, whether or not they are caught, whether or not they are circumstantially accused of it. I cannot forgive it, ever. And I cannot forgive the fact that Sammy Sosa still denies it to this day that he used any kind of performance-enhancing drug in his entire career. He was named in a 2003 anonymous test by the New York Times that he tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs at that time, and also he tested positive supposedly again in 2007. So the history is there for Sammy Sosa in that there was supposed to be an anonymous test, we all know, but he tested positive at one point. He says he's never tested positive for it, but again, I have to ask, you're giving an interview in English, right? Because in that congressional hearing with Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco, Rafael Palmeiro. We can't forget the pointing of the finger with Rafael Palmeiro. But you seem to forget how to speak English during that commission in front of Congress. Now you're speaking English and you're denying performance-enhancing drug use? That's kind of funny, don't you think? But again, I have no evidence to prove that Sammy Sosa did use performance-enhancing drugs, but there is plenty of evidence to show that he used a cork bat. He got caught red-handed with that one. So there's some history there with cheating, Sammy. I'm sorry, but it's kind of hard to believe you now. 10 years later, sure, you can look at it as like the great springboard to bring baseball back into popularity and America's good graces. But looking back on it now, what a sham. And I'm kind of pissed off about that. Mark McGwire, I'm never going to forgive him. Never going to forgive Sammy Sosa. Anybody, like I said, has been caught. Going forward, it's an unforgivable act. You do not deserve any good graces going forward. And that's just my opinion. Moving on to something that makes you feel a little bit better going into this 4th of July week. The feel-good story of the week, a act of kindness courtesy of the Blaze.
24-year-old Bilal Kintye is an amateur boxer from Georgia. He was preparing to go for a run when he saw 67-year-old Belinda Whitaker. She was just sitting in her wheelchair not moving, so he approached her and asked if something was wrong. Well, it turns out the battery in her chair died and she'd been stuck for over 45 minutes. So Kintye offered to push her chair all the way home, which is a 30-minute hike. But it gets even better. Check out what he told the camera when somebody was able to capture this moment on video. Watch this.
I don't care what you're going through. When God calls you for help, you're supposed to help. Period. Period. Ain't no ifs, ands, about. I don't care what you go through personally. When he stop you to tell you to help, you supposed to help. Period. Period.
Now, I didn't say it was a random act of kindness because when you look at it in its totality, all of them that have happened and are quickly going viral when they do get seen and recorded and posted here on many avenues of social media, I don't consider it anymore a random act of kindness. I think it's just an act of kindness that doesn't get seen very often. And when it does get seen, people want to latch onto it and promote it. And it shows the good that we all have in one another and what we can do for one another in helping in a time of need. So I don't count that as random. I think it's all around us. We just choose to record it and show it. And a lot of people love seeing those kinds of things. And I love seeing them too. We like to, get addicted to outrage, unfortunately. We like to always see the worst in humankind, but there's many more good things that are going on in the world nowadays on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis, and we just don't always see it, and we don't always look for it, unfortunately, but it's there. And they're no longer random acts of kindness. They happen all the time, and you choose to look for them and be one of those people that helps one another, and that's the good that I see in humanity going forward. And bravo to that amateur boxer in Georgia for helping out that lady in need, and anybody that does that. You can just post it anywhere. Send me a shout out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever it may be, Instagram. I'm everywhere. I'm all over the place. So we head into 4th of July week. It's a good reminder to count your blessings and be happy for living in the greatest country in the world. And happy birthday, America. Happy Independence Day. Have a great, safe week. I will see you next time for episode 17 of One-on-One with Wes the Sports Guy. I'm going to have a big announcement coming up in the very near future here on YouTube and at westhesportsguy.com. I will see you next time.